Thursday, April 11th, 2019, police were called to the Ocoee, Florida home of Samuel Celestin, who was in the middle of a severe mental health crisis. His family was hoping to utilize the Baker Act to help him. The family told the officers of his mental health issues, but he was tased and ended up dead instead of getting the help that he needed. The coroner ruled Samuel's death a homicide. The Ocoee and Windermere police officers involved were cleared of any wrongdoing. His family has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against both police agencies. They believe if the officers treated Samuel like a man in crisis instead of a criminal, he'd be alive to celebrate his 37th birthday today. Joining us now are Samuel's siblings, Joanne and Jean Celestin. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I first just want to extend my deepest sympathies and that of the show to your family. I know that this is a difficult day, but thank you for taking the time to honor your brother by utilizing this opportunity to share information with us all about what happened. Were either of you present on the day that he suffered the mental health break?
Yes, I was present that day. And so I was the one who actually called, 911 to actually seek help from my brother. I noticed that he was confused and that he was acting out of his character. And so, knowing the mental health, history that he has, I called, gave that complete history, and both to the operator and to the police officer that came on site.
What medical history, mental health history did he have? What did you tell them?
Yes. So Samuel was suffering from initially what looked like depression for many, many years, for most of the years. And then after that, he was diagnosed with anxiety as well. Then it was diagnosed with bipolar and schizoaffective schizophrenia.
And you informed the officers. Which police department did you call? When you called 911, what did you reach?
So I reached an operator, but they did send a Ocoee police officer because we do live in Ocoee, so that's where our home was.
All right. And so was it at that point you all left the home and he was left in the home? What happened when the officers arrived?
Right. So when the officers arrived, I met the officer in my vehicle with my mother. And so, again, I explained the medical condition. I myself as emergency room provider. And so I gave him all the medical backgrounds, and I told him also, hey, I know how he goes. I'll see him in the ER soon. And then my mother was the one who actually went with the officer because of, I had my children as well that I needed to attend at home with. So.
All right. And so at that point, just tell us what you know. I know that it wasn't you who was going to the home, but what is it that your mother informed of what happened? And what, if anything, is different about the way that the officers are telling the story?
Yeah, so from what I was made aware, they arrived, opened the door, and Samuel was obviously still confused, not sure if they're even a police officer, asking for credentials, asking them to check the water because he thinks like it's contaminated and poisonous. And he had like lots of things in his hands, keys, things he was collecting. And then from right then and there, they just started to tase him. No resistance nor anything like that he was doing. No verbal altercation from him. And two officers pulled out their tasers and they continued to tase Samuel on the chest, both of them. And Samuel fell to the ground, raised his hands, and said, please, please stop. And still, they continued to tase him. And then after that, Samuel saw an officer coming from the side view, and he says, please, sir, help me, runs towards that officer. And then he gets tackled, and then he gets tased again multiple times with multiple officers, to the point where he ended up getting hogtied, and stopped breathing. And um and at that time, he they wouldn't render him CPR, and so he ended up passing away, is what I found out. However, that night, you know we were told that he was fine and he was in the hospital.
You're saying someone contacted you on behalf of law enforcement and lied and told you that your brother was alive and doing fine?
They told my mother that, because remember, my mother was in the home, and so they did. When they were asking her a lot of questions after all the incidents, because at some point she was entered into the home, and so they did ask her a lot of questions, and she was like, "Well, I just want to know, like, what's going on with my son." And they're like, "Well, he's fine. He's in the hospital." And she's like, "Well, I need to go see him." And they're like, "No, no, you can't right now because there's an investigation going on." And they told her that he's alive, and asked her, "Do you want to press charges on him?" And stuff like that. Yeah.
So your mom though was on the scene at the time that they hogtied him, that we know now that he stopped breathing, but when he was taken away in the ambulance, she thought he was being taken away for treatment.
Correct. So at some point during all of the tasing and all that, she was escorted into the house, asked to go inside the house, and then she was quarantined in the home. So she could not see, most of what happened after that. Once he was no longer invisible from the front door, and, like, asking the other officer for help, she wasn't able to visibly see that, just the way the home is structured. But yes.
Now, I want to back up for a minute because I don't like to miss facts because people hear it and then they say we left something out. When your brother first opened the door, at some point the officers say that he had some sort of knife in his hand in addition to other things that he had in his hand. Is that accurate? And did he try to hurt anyone with it, or what happened with that?
No, when I arrived to the house, I never saw a knife. So I don't know anything about, being threatened by a knife or anything like that. But there were reports of that, but that was not anything that I, can attest to.
Well, and what we know for sure is by the time he was outside of the house and they ended up hog tying him, or tying him in this prone position, which so many times now we have seen this have devastating consequences. But at that point, he certainly wasn't armed. So I can't at all see any justification for that. Mr. Celestin, we talked a good bit about. And the video shows some of what happened to your brother, but we also mentioned that your family had hoped to use the Baker Act. What can you explain about what that means and what kind of outcome that should have been?
Yeah, the Baker Act basically is where you're able to get someone committed to treatment. Samuel had been Baker Act before. Joanne was at the scene and actually explained that to the officers. At one point, I don't know if, when the audience gets a chance, they can see the body cam for themselves. Joanne actually asks the officer, will a crisis team be coming? Because as a medical provider, someone who knows the community, she knows that when someone is struggling and someone's displaying clear symptoms of mental health crisis, they usually send a crisis intervention team to either assist the officers or help the person. The police officer dismissed it. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to interpret the footage for anybody. They can see it for themselves. But the officer pivots and basically continues to try to get the call to become a criminal call. We had hoped when we called that Samuel was going to be just helped to the hospital. Samuel is someone that throughout his history has never displayed, he's never hurt anyone. Samuel has been someone who's been a model citizen. Out of our entire family, we always say he was the best of us. And it's just tragic that his first encounter with police was his last encounter in life. And that to me is unacceptable, and it's painful and it's traumatic. And I think that that's something that everyone should think about because it could happen to any of us.
Absolutely. And, this is not what's supposed to happen when you call those who are supposed to be protecting and serving for help. And certainly, if they are not skilled to handle someone who's having a mental health crisis, then they should stand down until they can get someone there who can. But we also are aware, and I don't, whichever one of you, I know these facts are difficult, but I do want to bring them out so that our audience understands fully what happened. We're aware that when he was having not just mental health, but physical health issues breathing, issues choking, while they were restraining him, what seems to be unnecessarily, that some comments were made by the officers who refused to render him aid. Would one of you like to tell us what was said?
Yes, I've had a chance to watch the body cam footages. There's several, because there were so many officers involved, there's different versions. When my brother was no longer breathing, you can hear the officers almost sort of like try to get their stories together. And then you can hear one officer actually curse his body, basically saying that, we're trying to help him and he does this. And I'm not going to use the language that he used on live right now, but basically curses a dead body that's on the ground. And then towards the end, by the time that the ambulance came, sometime after, you can see just the casualness of the officers. I believe one of them at some point starts discussing his plans for happy hour. While my brother's body is being strapped to the gurney and being put into the ambulance. So, all of these things are things when you put them together are just unacceptable. They're things that are callous. They're things that are inhumane. They're things that no one here would be tolerated in the behavior that these officers displayed if they displayed it in their own life or in their own workspace. And so for us, it's just one of those things where these officers made choices, and Samuel needed help, and instead of helping him, the situation became escalated, and Samuel himself tries to de-escalate. Samuel puts up his hands, he clasps his hands together and says, "Please, please, sir, please stop, please help me." And they continue. And I want people to understand what that means. I want you to put yourself in that situation. You're disoriented. You're confused. You're paranoid. You actually thought the water was poison. You're worried for the safety of the people in the house. You're locking doors, and these officers come and they start tasing you. And as you're being tased, one pulls out a gun and he's telling you that he's gonna shoot you. He's gonna kill you, right? The confusion, right? And then when you run to another one for help, they tackle you and you have five grown men on top of you and you're being electrocuted. I want people to understand what that feels like because that to me is something that no human being should have to go through.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to your knowledge, what was the policy regarding the multiple uses of the taser and regarding the hog tying? Because in most jurisdictions that even still allow for it, you have to be on your side if they're going to restrain you in that manner.
Yeah, we didn't know anything about policies. Obviously, no one's prepared for this. Neither of us, no one in the family, besides my father, no one went to law school. So, what we've heard after the fact is the fact that it's just known common practice in law enforcement that don't hog tie someone. And if you are going to hog tie someone, you at least flip them over right away in order for them to breathe. But it shouldn't even come to that point. My brother was not a threat to these officers. My brother was someone who was a sick patient. It would be no different than going to find someone who has a different type of health issue, and then because they're disoriented, you escalate the situation. These officers, taunted him. They made fun of the questions that he was asking. They were overly sarcastic. I mean, these are all things. And to Samuel's credit, he didn't try to hurt any of these officers, right? And so, the policy for us is just justice, is something that is possible in spurts. And for us, at the end of the day, we can't bring Samuel back. But the idea that some 5 people could be involved in a situation where a young man loses his life and there is no repercussion. No one loses anything. Everyone goes back to work like nothing happened.
Right, and
And we
absolutely, and
have,
that's actually the next thing that I wanted to find out about, or really the last thing I want to find out about, and it's Ms. Celestin. Is it Doctor? Doctor?
Dr. Celestin,
No,
yes.
Yes, Dr. Celestin. It's my understanding that none of the officers have faced any type of consequences, that there's been no criminal charges and there's been no employment action against them. Is that correct?
that's
Yes, to our
absolutely
knowledge. I'm sorry, go ahead,
correct.
Joanne.
Yeah, so absolutely nothing has been done, not even a suspension a day, nothing, absolutely not. No one has reached out to us as a family either from the police, department, nor the mayor or anyone. So really, it's not being addressed. Let's be real, unless that, besides us knocking on doors, through our attorneys, we would have not even found the body cam. The body cam came literally close to 2 years after. That's when they released it. Close to 2 years, which is exactly, you're legal. So exactly where that statute of limitation starts to come in. And that even took us, we had to go to court for that.
Yeah.
We had to go to court because they were saying that my mother was not next of kin. She had to prove that she was the next of kin. So it's cover up after cover up and completely dismissive. Where this occurred, although it's a COE, our home is situated right next to, Windermere. We're talking about running distance to, Tiger Woods' homes, Shaquille O'Neal's homes. This is like right there. It's, located. And so it's a real like hush hush is what's really going on. But it's very shameful. Me being in the medical field and just knowing like work that attorneys do and accountants do and everybody else. There's all this accountability we have for life. However, just the mere fact that you would not render CPR to a dying man and you're a police officer. You're a police officer. And so it's like, that to me is unacceptable.
Right, and the failure to render aid for someone who is in law enforcement or in the medical profession is not just a civil issue, it's a crime. Hello, Monique Worrell, I'm talking to you. But you all have filed a lawsuit. What is the status of that?
Well, we can't really talk too much about the lawsuit. However, our efforts has been to try to bring attention to what happened to Samuel. We hope that this doesn't happen to anyone. We do believe, the community who has seen the body footage and who has seen the facts of the case, there's not a single person that we've met that doesn't believe that there's something criminal here. And we do have, we have this situation where we're in a town where, we always talk about as, I'm going to bring it back to the village right now, as Black people, we always talk about we want a seat at the table, and here we are in a community where there's affluent Black elected officials. As Joanne mentioned before, we were on our own. It took 2 years for us to even know how Samuel died. We didn't even know how he died. We had to go and find everything because there was such a firewall every single place that we went. And not a single person approached us and said, how can we be of help? And I'm talking about people that look like us, right? Yeah. And so, now we're in a situation where we have a state attorney that, made a lot of promises about police accountability. And here we are where we have a case. Samuel's one of multiple cases that has happened in the in the Orange County community, where, they've found a way to never prosecute officers for killing or body slamming or shooting people in the back. And that to me is just very scary. It's very scary because all of these people that are at the local level, some of these people are going to become they're going to become national, and so it's just very scary to me that we're in a situation where we have our seat at the table, but all of these are like Pyrrhic like positions and no one's really actually taking the stance to actually deliver on what they promise.
Yeah.
Well, something has to be done, and I certainly applaud your steadfastness, your boldness, your bravery in fighting for justice for your brother. We all want to wish a happy heavenly birthday to your brother Samuel. Today actually is the day, my late grandfather's birthday as well. So a very special day for two very special men, and count on us and count on our support, Joanne Celestin and Jean Celestin. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.